This is after lunch. We are dealing with AI now. I'm never really quite sure what that is. I did Google, my wife showed me how to get onto ChatGPT, and I asked the ChatGPT, could you explain to how real estate will be transformed by AI to a 10-year-old? And I got the greatest response. Imagine that there's a man in your house who knows how to fix things in your house, et cetera, et cetera. But at any rate, I'm going to leave this panel to much smarter people than me, organized by Cherie Santos-Wuest, who's one of the key players in our whole in the whole conference, and she's done so many different things. A graduate of the School of Architecture, worked for the State of Connecticut Trust Funds, knows everybody in the business, even more than I do, Cherie, and has been such a rock for our program, which, by the way, did you know, Cherie? Curtis told me this. This is the 20th anniversary of the Yale Alumni in Real Estate Association.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so thank you. Did not know that. So I'm going to introduce you, Cherie, and you can introduce your fine panel. So everybody, this is Cherie Santos-Wuest, who's got her own wonderful real estate advisory firm, Celadon, in Washington, D.C. Thank you, Cherie.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm just going to assume the mic's working. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So, hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for making it back from lunch. We, on time even. We are excited to assemble our awesome panel of practitioners in real estate today. As Kevin mentioned, really, this panel seeks to demystify the role of AI in our respective work. And we're offering basically a snapshot in time because we, as you all know, and as you probably surmise, AI is still in evolution. And its uses in real estate are likely to grow and to expand even further to touch other industries. And so, without further ado, I would like to, you have the panelists' bios there. I'm not going to read them to you, but I would like to introduce our panelists here today. And if you could each describe your role in the firm and what your firm does in the real estate space before we launch our discussion.
Cool.
Starting with you, Rish.
All right. Thanks, Cherie. Thank you all for coming. I know the after lunch lull could be hitting you all right now. So hopefully, Cristian, Cherie, and I can keep you all engaged. So if I call on some people, don't be afraid. Socratic method in here. Not
Stay
a lawyer,
awake.
but yeah, my name's Rish Gosine. I work for a firm called Pennybacker Capital, based in Austin, Texas. We're a real assets firm. Our bread and butter is really in multifamily, but we also play in industrial, retail, mixed use, and now infrastructure. When we have about $4 billion of assets under management, and we just finished closing our other fund at a little over $1.6 billion. A lot of that is due to our Alpha platform, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But my background is not in real estate, so it's my first time coming into this world. But I have worked with real estate data. So as you may have seen in the bio, previous stops were Nike, Bloomingdale's, Whole Foods, Amazon, Best Buy, really big companies, But what I say for my role, which is highly technical, the maths, that's it. It's math doesn't lie, and to be quantitatively driven really helps, in this world of data and analytics and technology. And we can transfer that sort of skill set in any industry, whether it's retail, healthcare, real estate, anything like that. So thank you all for having me. Really excited to be here.
I'm Christine Wendell. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Pronto Housing. Pronto provides software to streamline affordable housing income certifications. So you can think of us kind of like TurboTax for the affordable housing qualification process. The traditional process of applying to affordable housing is like stacks of paper everywhere, very manual, in-person interviews, and property teams that know about the nuances of the regulatory agencies and requirements of specific buildings. And so Pronto makes that faster and easier so teams can lease up quickly, reduce their compliance risk and cost. And I would say that we are one solution, which I'm going to get into more, in the broader trend of using technology to streamline multifamily operations, and also thinking about centralization and what is the workforce look like today, the on-site property managers, what are they capable of versus what is a different way to address those same pain points that residents and properties have.
I'm Cristian Oncescu, Associate and Project Architect with Newman Architects. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you all for coming. Newman Architects is a New Haven-based firm with a 60-year history. We are a collaborative and knowledge-driven firm. We offer comprehensive services in architecture, interior design, branding, and lighting, kind of a complete package. And we bring those services to bear on the educational sector, commercial development, like multifamily housing, and cultural and community projects. As project architect, I'm in charge of coordinating and leading the design efforts on the projects that I'm responsible for. I wear many hats. It's a huge range from making sure that all the clients' needs are met from program, area, quality, but also sort of the more abstract portion of the design itself, the architectural expression, matching the client's values, and making sure that the spaces enrich the end users' lives, and making sure that the building is a good neighbor and a sustainable neighbor to its neighbors in the city. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you so much. And before we go into dig deep into the weeds, into what you all do, I would actually like for Rish, since you are not necessarily the real estate person on the group, to give us an overview and a definition of what AI is for some of people who haven't, whose only connection to AI has been ChatGPT. Tell us in your kind of broader, give us a broader picture of what AI is, please.
Sure. So this is when I'm going to call on some of you. Who is excited about AI? Show of hands. Yeah? Okay, cool. Who wants to offer up a definition into what AI is? Nobody? We got one? We got two? All right, yeah, let's hear it.
I would say, just from my perspective, AI is in the lineage of automations that go back to RPA, computer vision, all types of different types of automation that now becomes self-generating in some way.
Cool, good one. Do you want to offer something else? I think your hand was up as well.
It's a system of pattern recognition that's translated into meaningful knowledge for us.
Yeah. So that's the crux of what I'm trying to say here, right? There's so many different definitions of AI, and they all kind of play with each other. That's exactly what AI is doing, from the code, the models, the tools. They're all playing with each other. There's no industry standard definition for AI. My definition, it's kind of like a catch-all. It's exactly what you two said, but the way I look at it, AI is essentially it's a confluence of the people, the processes, and then products or technologies that all work with one another to mimic cognitive function of the human brain. You may hear something called AGI that's the whole Terminator kind of crazy.
You heard it here first.
But I'm not going to get into that one because we may talk about existential threats later. But yeah, so we're trying to mimic the human brain. Humans are very smart, so AI is really trying to put together all of these different things to think like a human. Going back to recognizing patterns, but maybe do it more quickly. Going back to automating processes for us, so that we can free up our time. Because we still have the emotional intelligence. So AI, the way I tell people, it's a means, not an end, okay? It's there not to replace you, but it's there for you to leverage, appropriately going forward. So that's kind of like how I define AI. I'd like to hear what you two have to say.
We weren't part of the pre-presentation. I'm just going to second what you say. I think that one point that I know that you're going to get into more later is just thinking about that AI is only as good as the underlying data. And many of you well know that property management systems, investment underwriting systems frequently don't have perfect data. And so when you think about what is the output, so like, for example, my mom recently told me she did some financial analysis using ChatGPT. So she didn't want to go and look up a bunch of different statistics around small caps. And so she just said, go pull that for me. And then she looked at the output and she was like, no, that's not right. But if you have a entry-level analyst doing that analysis, they're just like, great, got the data. So we're still at the stage where for certain products, or for if you're just doing ChatGPT, where the output is not reliable, right? It doesn't have a moral conscience. It doesn't have a gut check. It is ingesting data, behaving like the human, but only as good as the inputs. Anything
I have very little to add to that, except that at the core of that is the fact that the models that we are all, let's say, familiar with in the news, they are at their core probabilistic. So it can give you wrong information, even if the data is there for it to quote unquote pull from. There's always a chance that it's going to, I shouldn't say always. It really depends. You should be aware of what the model is that you're using, what data it was trained on, what the underlying logic of it is, and if it is prone to hallucinations or errors.
It's a great starting point to launch into. And what I'd really like to focus on here is to have each panelist at this point describe how they use AI in their day-to-day work and in your lines of work. And we're so blessed that they actually have slides to show. So I think I'd like to start with Christine first and give each of the panelists 5 minutes to really go through describing and illustrating how they have engaged and integrated their AI into their work.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk about both how I use AI at Pronto and also what I'm seeing more broadly across the multifamily industry, since Pronto is very narrowly focused in affordable housing. So all of our customers, we work with property managers. We often get in through the ownership group.
These are the slides.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so all of them are using other solutions alongside Pronto, and then they also have a general property management system that's doing the bulk of their property management. So the trends that I'm seeing are around predictive analytics, automated leasing, and intelligent maintenance. So how did I come up with these three? I put together an outline, and I used an AI tool to create this presentation. I did edit it for making sure that it's saying what I want, and I gave it the broad outline, but this presentation took me about 10 minutes to put together. Wow. That is significantly faster than if I had done it manually, and looks pretty good, although feel free to critique it and give me some feedback afterwards. You'll also see that there's something on the bottom right, it says made with Gamma, which is the presentation tool that I used. Feel free to check it out, it's very helpful. But then I also added in some slides that I already had. So on the leasing front, that is where we're seeing, I'd say, the most AI-driven solutions, and particularly around the time that it takes to interact with humans. Residents, applicants, they want to feel like they're having a human experience. And so there's a bunch of solutions that are chatbots. So Elaine, which is a lease AI, Lisa, which is Appfolio, Funnel has an option, Colleen, which is Entrada, bought that company. It's worth calling out that all of the AI assistants are women, which I think should change. But either way, applicants will frequently come in and say, oh, I was already talking to Lisa, can I meet with her? And it's an AI solution. The whole point of this is for the bottom line. The whole point is NOI, so get units leased, make the operating efficiencies faster, and then on the maintenance side, reduce your operating expenses. For Pronto, the place where we play in terms of increasing NOI is around making compliance a lot more efficient. So the problem is that the traditional process is that people come in person, fill out forms by hand. You have a property team that you've invested a ton of time in training them on this particular process, and then they quit two weeks later. and it takes way too long, and so you don't have that rental income, and you have compliance risk. And if you know the affordable housing space well, you know that that can result in loss of both the voucher income, operating expenses going up if you lose your real estate tax abatement, and then there's also a lot of zoning implications in terms of abiding by those compliance requirements. So our software is kind of like TurboTax. It walks through the certification process. So there's an applicant-facing side, and then there's a property team-facing side. And on the property side, it puts together that income certification package. So we use AI not only in our product, but also in our business. So on the engineering side, as we're actually building our product, there's a lot of AI. So automated code testing, so looking for vulnerabilities, basically poking at where someone who is hacking Pronto might be able to get in, and then automatically notifying our engineering team so that they can patch any of those vulnerabilities. Pronto handles a lot of PII, or personal identifiable information, because the income qualification process is pay stubs, bank statements, social security card, tax returns. It's really every piece of financial information you can think of. And so it is really important that we have very high security. And both in writing the code and in testing it, AI plays a big role in that. Then in sales, so meeting people who are in the real estate space, I can use something like Clay, that's a product that helps with lead generation, and say, okay, I want to meet people in Seattle who have one of these 10 titles that have properties with the MFTE program. And I can get a decent list. It's not like the very best list. It's not going really deep into the market, but it's a very good starting place. And then with marketing, so putting together this deck, putting together posts that go on LinkedIn, or we don't use Instagram or TikTok or whatever else has come out since I stopped being as socially savvy, but you can use AI to deliver all of those marketing collateral tools. And then the last piece is in the product. So what are we actually offering to our customers? How are they using AI? And I think that around the product, we're very cognizant of putting bumpers around where the AI is, so that it is contained. So we use it for document reading and in some instances for the resident communication. The place where we don't use AI, where people might think that you could, is in understanding the regulatory requirements. There are some markets that are very well documented where you say, okay, for example, in New York City, there is a marketing handbook put out by the regulatory agency, HPD. They have all of their required forms. They're listed online. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, for the inclusionary program, we have a quarterly call with the woman who heads up that program, where they're still trying to figure out exactly what those requirements are. And that's more common. And so going through that process is a human process, and it's us documenting it, and that's not something where AI can help. Looking to the future in terms of challenges and opportunities, I think really the biggest opportunity is in operational efficiencies. So right now, especially in affordable housing, but I would say generally in multifamily, you have increasing operating costs, particularly around insurance. You have collection issues. And then you have stagnant rental growth, sometimes even declining in some markets. You could have a view on how that's going to change, but either way, there's definitely a need to decrease the operating expenses, and so to make one person able of doing a lot more without just having them work a lot more hours and have your amount of people that are quitting go up even more, which is already a big problem. So a lot of companies are looking at, as they introduce Pronto, they centralize compliance. We're working with a company right now who is offshoring it to the Philippines, which is a model I've never seen before for affordable compliance, but it is, of course, more common with accounting, for example. That's a people solution. With AI, you can also say, how do we make it so that we can either empower that other person or that we don't need a person to do this role anymore at all. For compliance, it is about making it so that someone who doesn't know compliance can take on this role. And then the last piece of it is cultural shift. So when we asked who was excited about AI, everyone in this room, pretty much, I think, raised their hands. Pronto works with property managers, and if you say, hey, do you want to do something differently and automate it and have technology? A lot of them are like, how do I make you leave as quickly as possible? So there is this cultural element to it, and I think that honestly, this is going to be one of the biggest challenges for a more sophisticated, educated user, which I think both of you work with. It's a different story. But when you're actually talking boots on the ground at the property level, I've had someone tell me, I don't want the software to choose what form is needed because I want my team to know what form they're supposed to fill out. And I was like, why? And also, I said, when was the last time you had staff turnover? You know, how many times did you have to train someone? What form? How much time did you lose doing that? What happens if you quit? The person who is your boss, they don't know what form. Now they have to find a consultant, and what if that consultant wants to do it differently? How well is this documented? So that piece of it, which is a bit outside the AI, is a really big challenge, and I think that the solution will be some change management, but I think in some cases it will be just that person is not going to be part of the future of operations and a full replacement.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine, for taking that tedious, esoteric, and mind-numbing task of certification and also illustrating how you've actually integrated into your business processes.
Thank you.
Rish, you're up next.
All right. If anybody's wondering about the hair, I went to University of Texas, and we're the #1 ranked team right now. We have a big game against Georgia. So, flying out after this, let's go. But yeah, excited about my team, excited about being here. And let me just go ahead and go.
I think it's supposed to come in afterwards if you just click next.
There we go.
There we go.
Cool. So, fancy name that I came up with when I joined Pennybacker. Instead of just being the normal tech and data people, Alpha Investment Intelligence and Innovation. It's a little nod to how Pennybacker founded or started 18 years ago by our CEO, co-founder Tim Berry. He started something called N3, so I thought the AI cubed was a pretty nice touch, and there's some other things that go into this, but the Alpha comes from the platform that I'm going to talk about that we've developed internally at Pennybacker Capital. So this platform's trademarked. It's how we run our business. Almost everything, every investment decision, it goes through that. And we like to incorporate the human part of it as well too, because we do know, AI is trying to act like a human. We're not fully there yet. So as we get there, we are going to need humans to offer their input and help us comb through some of the models and the data input. Have to put this up there for legal, compliance, risk purposes. So,
it's the gray stuff nobody reads.
Yeah,
right?
but I did show it to everybody here. So I have lots of witnesses. I'm not going to be able to give you everything in the secret sauce of the code, but hopefully what I give you will get you kind of excited and think about the possibilities and see how we're leveraging or starting to leverage AI in real estate. So. Investing with the inside of technology. That's exactly what I was talking about. So Pennybacker Alpha, it's this tool that gives us all of this information from information that we put into it, right? So one thing that we see in the real estate industry is we have lots of data, but sometimes that data isn't very good. So like what Christine was saying earlier, right? It's only as good as your inputs and things of that nature, right? So how do you make decisions if you don't have good data? A lot of that comes from the foundation of everything. So as you all start thinking about your firms or things like that, a key component is data engineering. It's a very difficult skill set, but you have to have good data engineers. People that can bring in that data, automate that stuff for you so that your data scientists, the thing that everybody knows, the roles that everybody hears, your AI scientists, what's coming out now, things like that, they're only as good as the data that's coming in to your data warehouse, whatever else it may be. So we bring in tons of data. A lot of it's internal proprietary data. Some of it's external data from different partners. But the cool thing about working in data, and one of the reasons why I came to Pennybacker was the ability to make an impact. So the way I see this industry right now, it's really ripe for that impact. Being at those big companies that I listed earlier, the real estate industry is, 10, 12 years behind. I was seeing and doing some of these things like back in 2012 when, I was one of the first data hires at Whole Foods Market. And so here we are 12 years later, and I'm like, oh, this is what we're doing. The difference is, though, is that we have more data available, more compute power available, more tools and technology available, and more talent available. How many students do I have in here? Show of hands. Quite a bit, right? So the students, whether you are a tech computer science type of student, whether you're a business student, everybody should be leaning into this, and they can help either drive that cultural change if you're on the business side of adopting AI, or help build some of these AI tools. So it's something that is going to allow our industry to take off and accelerate much faster than it did 12 years ago when I was at Whole Foods. So this is now how we operate. Do I have some stuff going on in here? Okay, cool. So this is what we call the lake house, and in our lake house and Pennybacker Alpha system, this shows everything of how we bring in data. So if you go and you look on the left side, we can bring in all different types of data sources. You think about structured data, nice clean Excel files. We all love that, right? Think about unstructured data, the stuff that we don't love, but we now have the ability to process. So think about it from ingesting a PDF, or maybe one of our investment professionals at Pennybacker Capital is walking through a property site. They can talk in their phone, record whatever notes, so they don't have to type. They can be engaged, they can record it, and then we can upload that straight into the lake house. And then we can process that and take out insights and things like that. So operational efficiency, what Cristian said earlier, is key, when we start talking about AI. So as we go through all of this stuff, we have to govern everything with a high degree of responsibility and ethics, and I think that's really key, and that's why you see Unity Catalog and data governance up top. So that is king for me. We want to make sure our data is secure, it's private, and it's clean. And when I say clean, you look over there at the storage where you see those little folders, you see landing, bronze, silver, and gold. So the landing zone is when we want to get data. Think of it like maybe a CoStar, which probably most people in here use. Then, as we manipulate the data, as we transform the data, it graduates to bronze, silver, and gold. Once it gets to gold, that data is now trustworthy. Our investment professionals, our data scientists, they can all use that data. So as we go through all of that, we have different outputs. We're building a web portal right now, so everything will be in one web portal, whether it's mobile, desktop, whatever else it may be. You can access all of our models, predictions, analytics, documentation, data lineage. But it comes out in different forms. Data science outputs, which are custom notebooks that we can send out to people. Excel, everybody loves Excel, except me. And then Power BI, so we use Power BI, but you can use any visualization tool that you want. I love Tableau as well. I think it's really good in the real estate industry because of their mapping feature. So this is Pennybacker Alpha. This drives all of the investment decisions at our firm. So to continue on to that, none of that's possible without this team. Very different for me as I try to build this team, from the ground up, because, I came from those companies to where my teams were bigger than the entire firm that I work at now, So as I build this team and I scale it, it goes back to the definition I said earlier, people. People is part of AI. You need to have the right people to do this, and you need to have alignment across the board. So one mistake I see, and I think there's different ways, and feel free to ask me about this, is we don't invest in people sometimes, and we'll just get a bunch of different third-party tools, and then none of the data aligns. So you get different decisions. You don't have, a Kelly Such, a Samya, a Austin, a Faustin, who sit with our investment committees. They're there, and they're building these tools based off the insights and the business, opinions from all of our investment professionals as we, try to make these decisions going forward. I am hiring, hence why I decided to include 2 open hires. So if anybody knows any good data engineers or anything like that, feel free to pass them along or come see me. So yeah, a lot of props to my team. Had to black out a lot of stuff here. So and I had to really boil this slide down. But this is how we're using machine learning and rent predictions. So rent growth. So this is really key for us. We're taking in all of this data, over 70 different variables, and it's actually more, and we're doing something called feature engineering. So think about filling in missing values, categorical changes, converting into numeric values, once I said the math, things like that, combining highly correlated variables into one variable, and we use that in different types of algorithms, and we'll test lots of algorithms. We'll go with ridge regressions, we'll go gradient boosting, a bunch of different algorithms like that, right, in order to produce an output. So once we get that, we're now doing predictions quarterly and semi-annually and annually for all of our MSAs, submarkets, across the U.S. So what's the applicability of that? In the simplest terms, if we know rent growth predictions, or maybe it's rent reduction, and it's not really a growth, we know when to go try to acquire assets in a certain market, We know when to dispose of certain assets before, that rent starts to fall off. So it really helps drive the overall profitability for us, We're also doing other things that I didn't show on here, to where we're starting to get down to block level. And then eventually, as we get more and more data, we'll get down to asset level, in terms of buying that, in terms of using machine learning algorithms. So rent growth predictions is something really huge. The other thing that we're currently working on is just you all do shopping, right? Everybody will go on the Nike app or Bloomingdale's app or whatever else at me, and you'll be like, recommended by, or have you thought about buying this, or whatever else it may be. You click on a jacket or something and be like, hey, we recommend these pants or whatever to go with you, right? So that same sort of logic can be applied, in the real estate industry. When I say the math's. So essentially, we're now developing a deal recommendation model. So we're getting all of that, and it's going to help us identify deals in different places to be like, hey, this is where you need to, invest, whether it's a submarket, market, or an asset, or whatever else it may be. So that's how AI is really starting to take off. It requires a ton of data, but it needs to be governed well, and it's only as good as the training data that you train it with. So you need to make sure that your data is really clean. And in real estate, there's a lot of bad data sources. That's the easiest way for me to say it. And then same thing with infrastructure. We invest in infrastructure. We have our first infrastructure fund right now, and we're raising money and we're doing all that other stuff with it. But since we're starting off with this lake house now, there's no tech debt. So all the infrastructure data we get, we are thoroughly cleaning it from ground zero, and it's in there. So it's going to help our infrastructure platform take off even further, because we don't have to dig out a tech debt from 18 years ago or whatever else it may be. So with that being said, that goes into the infrastructure side. So this is Cambrian Innovation. So we used our alpha system with all of our different data, and I had to take some points off of this, to essentially purchase a company called Cambrian Innovation out there in Massachusetts. So Cambrian Innovation, they work with a lot of wastewater. So we, wastewater recycling. So with Cambrian, we've now bought this company, and we've taken it, and we're starting to power the growth of the company. So we have contracts with Anheuser-Busch, Keurig, Dr. Pepper, things like that, right? Pepsi, to where we're recycling their wastewater, or Cambrian Innovation is, but our platform helped drive the decision to acquire something like that. And now Cambrian's starting to get some really big names behind it, right? And it's just growing and growing and growing. So we have a few more things lined up down the line, with that, but that's how we're using AI and how we're using technology. I know I had to speak at a very high level here, but feel free to find me afterwards for a little bit or anything like that. Happy to answer any questions. So I'm going to hand it up to Cristian.
Thank you so much, and I could listen to him for a little bit longer, but I've been given a 10-minute, and if you can indulge me, maybe we can shorten up our networking break afterwards. But thank you so much for bringing in the private equity and investment space, and also raising the aspect of the human capital required to fuel AI as well as issues related to governance and checks and balances, which are necessary in this space. And so we'll end our presentation here with Cristian, who's going to talk to us about what you all know about the bricks and mortar of real estate.
Can I just see a show of hands? Who here has worked with an architect before, either personally or professionally? Okay, good. That's encouraging. Okay, I'm going to try to give an abridged version of this presentation, but I think in addition to the mandate to demystify AI, I'm going to try to demystify the design process a little bit before getting into some of the tools that we're looking at. I am very jealous of these two panelists here who have their own tools, who have quality data to work with. It's a different scenario in design and construction. So one of the things that I want to start off with is just to show some of the recently completed projects that we have at Newman. And there's a couple of images of educational projects, commercial development, but what I really want all of you to take away from this image is that most of our project, I would say practically all of our project, and this is true of most architects, they are very bespoke to a site, to a client's needs, to the environment that they're in, whether it's a college campus, a city with historical aspects, or the bottom row, there's new construction and renovation as part of the same project. There's so much specificity in what we do and what architects typically do that we don't design with a blank slate, and therefore I think architecture-specific or construction-specific AI tools are very limited in what they can deliver given the huge complexities of building construction. Very, very broadly talking about the sort of task typologies that go into the design process. I put forward that there's 3 kinds of task typologies. Some happen at particular points in the design process, but let's just say they happen throughout. One is input analysis. Ideally, most of that happens at the beginning. You're looking at collecting the program elements from the client, in other internal factors. Then there's external factors, codes, climate parameters, things that ideally you have at the outset to drive your design, but you always collect new things, or the design morphs, the needs change, you always need to collect additional information. That is ripe for AI automation. You honestly don't even need AI for that. You can hard code a lot of that potentially. The bulk of the design process is iterating through design options. It is then picking one with the client that then gets documented, gets turned into construction drawings, specifications, and rendering happens throughout. This is also quite ripe for automation in the sense that there's a lot of repetitive tasks with clear goals. You know, when it comes to producing a documentation set or specifications, you are simply documenting the conditions. And these days, architects are in building information software in Revit, so you have very data-rich models. And I'll get a little bit more into the optioneering point of that. And then there's a third kind of tasks that I would argue is where architects add the greatest value, which is the actual creativity, the exercising of professional judgment, and what has been called problem worrying in addition to problem solving. The idea that you're creating additional problems as you're solving the main problem, which is the building design, and solving many little things to solve one big thing. And it's a question mark when and if AI will reach that point given the increased complexity of buildings. All of you are quite familiar with ChatGPT, so I'll move very quickly through this. So within Newman, we have a number of knowledge groups. I am a co-chair of the Design Methods and Technology Knowledge Group, and our purpose is to spearhead efforts to do research, to figure out new softwares and existing softwares and how they can be incorporated into our workflow to add value to our business and to our clients. But there is an individual online who has been trying to keep track of all of the AI tools that purport to be AI-driven and in the AEC space. His list is about 1,600 pieces of software, some of which are established, that maybe Adobe, Adobe having their image generators, and some that are the flimsiest of concepts that, that can barely do anything. Maybe 100 to 200 of those 1,600 are actually useful. But a big question is, what should we look at? How do we discover new tools? So we definitely started with looking at the things that are in the news and seeing how things like ChatGPT can be applied. And it has some success in answering technical questions. We always double check whatever we get. Some folks in our office use it to overcome writer's block. We can perhaps query long documents, uploading documents and then interrogating that. We have honestly not used it for summarizing emails and composing responses, but that's possible. And we're also interested in the production level code ability that to perhaps create small programs for ourselves. The other thing is the image generators that have been out there. Dolly, Midjourney, Stable Diffusion, these may be things that you have heard of. They are useful to some degree, but they do not deliver really on the promise of informing the options that we're doing in terms of how they're going to perform once the building is built. But just to say, it can be used to create concept art, to brainstorm. These are tests that we've done. This is by no means rolled out in any wide way in our office. Jumping from hand sketches to photoreal rendering so that we can explore quick studies without having to model them in 3D. Or, and I apologize, it's a little bit small on the right, going from a sketch sort of a low modernist building and transforming it into something like a neo-Gothic style, just to see if that is something that's possible also in a different artistic style. I think some of the real value that we're looking at here is in our partnerships with our engineers and with contractors. Engineers have access, and through our clients, they have access to a lot of data through building management systems. So there is a future where all this data can be processed and then be available to architects and engineers so that when we look at options or design options, they are informed in terms of how they might perform in the future, in terms of user experience, in terms of energy performance, sustainability, any of those things. That is something that would add real value to what we do and what we offer as architects. Contractors, I've spoken to a few in preparation for this event, and they all hit on the same things, that they are looking for tools. How to have information on site when they're working with subcontractors. If you have hundreds or thousands of submittals, tens of thousands of documents, how can you interrogate that and get correct information when you need it? How to accelerate cost estimating, and how to accelerate construction schedule planning. And I list a couple of tools that I'm aware of that might offer this, but there, like I said, there's 1,600 that purport to be operating in this space. So plenty of opportunities. I don't think we're quite there yet, and the challenges are things that we outlined at the very beginning, that of trust and accuracy in the outputs, the quality of the data, also ease of use and control, and awareness of new tools. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cristian. And in the interest of time, and rather than going through more of my questions, I'd like to open up to the audience right now if you have any questions. Otherwise, I do have my own questions. Oh, don't be shy.
A couple of questions over there.
Oops. Hello. I have a question. If you had to describe the kind of client that is most receptive to your ideas, who do you have in mind? I mean, across industry or asset typology, who in your mind is most ready in the real estate industry to embrace these tools and technologies?
I'm happy to dive in. Go ahead. I would say that generally speaking, it does fall along education. So more educated, more sophisticated professionals, investment professionals are more open to how do we do things the best possible way. So Pronto started by working with like compliance consultants and property managers, and now a lot of times we're going directly to ownership groups. Sometimes they introduce us to their property managers, but sometimes they just say, we're going to take this function away from them and build a team that has no pre-informed concept of how this should be done, and we're just going to rework the whole thing.
Can you hear me? Yeah. This is for Cristian. Did I see that correctly, that you said that it's not useful for zoning and code?
ChatGPT has guardrails installed that if you ask it code questions, it says it cannot answer. So they have put in these guardrails where if you ask it for information that has an impact on the health, safety, and well-being of people, of users, that architects are, part of our job is to protect them by following code. They are shifting that liability onto someone else. So that there are code databases, companies that own code databases that are creating ChatGPT-like tools, but they're also running into this issue of how to offer up the information without hallucinations or errors. And the most useful thing is when they actually, the AI model also puts forward where it got the information from. So then you might ignore what it actually output, but you can just jump to the section of the code or zoning document to read it for yourself, which is still something that we have to do at this point.
Right. I mean, I would just argue from an A-cubed perspective, getting a better grip on that messy data would really help understanding the investment thesis for anything that you do, right? And it's in some ways, the messier the data, the more value the insights would be.
There are some companies that are looking at like, what can you build here? One company is called City Builder, but to your point about having the proper data, like they have a partnership with the city, it's not Seattle, but it's somewhere near there, where they're basically, the city has said, here are city lots. And so it's like a finite data source. I think that probably will expand in the future in terms of like the what can you build here question.
Yeah, I can't speak to how exactly AI features into these tools, but there's a number of tools that I've seen that seem to be more numerically driven, and you know there might be components that are hard coded, and you can definitely trust that. What if it's to see density, subdivisions of floor plates, things like that. There's tools like that out there. What I'm interested in the most is the machine learning component, where you can feed huge amounts of data to a computer to an AI model to identify patterns that humans might come to understand, but they can just do it so quickly and then ideally extrapolate from it. And the tools, there might be diamonds in the list of 1,600 that I mentioned, but we're waiting to see those, come to the top.
My question is for Rish. I am curious in your definition of artificial intelligence. It seems like the technology that you're using is primarily discriminative. Machine learning and algorithms and things that we've had for quite a while. And I think when people are talking about AI today, the first thing that pops into their mind are generative applications. So I'm curious in terms of like what you're seeing in terms of a boost in people's awareness and implementation of machine learning. And then second, what generative technologies you're considering implementing into your product.
Yeah, that's, what was your name?
Lori.
Glory? Thank you for the question. Yeah, so I mean, like, a lot of people think AI is this new thing, but it's been going on for decades, right? When they were making computers that can play chess, in the 70s and all of that other stuff, that's all machine learning, algorithms.
Or Google Map.
Yeah, or that too, right? Like, deep learning, the best deep learning algorithm we all know, from a neural network is Google, right? They have just thousands, hundreds of millions of nodes, and how they build their search engine, and it's the ideal example. I mean, I don't know who uses Bing in here, but, it's like everybody wants to use something, you go to Google, right? It's like, I'm just going to Google it. So, yeah, the machine learning, it's, Gloria, it's a difficult one to answer because everybody really is thinking about just generative AI, right? And a lot of that has to do with what you were talking about, Cristian, with the LLMs and things of that nature, which is just trained on massive amounts of data. I debated on using ChatGPT at our firm, but I like to keep our data private, so I would need a private instance of ChatGPT. So with the wonderful data engineers that I have, we decided to build our own LLM. We will train it based off data and all of our DDQs, all of our written responses, how we write our letters, our reports, and things of that nature. And we will teach it to sound, the way that our investment professionals sound when they put out these reports. The other part to it, though, is with that lakehouse architecture is creating what I call a semantic layer. So in this semantic layer, it's a metric store, it's a fully governed metric store to where our investment team will be able to query or ask certain things and pull those metrics. So one thing that I'm in the process of cleaning up right now, which I'm sure a lot of people are, there may be one metric that has 5 different names, and different people talk about it, but it's the same metric, right? And that makes it really difficult to train some of these generative AIs. So to answer your question, we're going to continue to lean in with the machine learning models, doing more accurate predictions with our current models, building new ones. But we are going to use generative AI, but we're going to build it internally. We're going to build we've already tested a chatbot internally, to do certain things. And we're going to augment that, with another tool to have self-service analytics that's more in a spreadsheet format that our investment professionals don't have to be handicapped by my team. If we're getting bombarded with stuff, they can slice and dice the data in the way that they want to. And the reason why I'm very comfortable doing that is because of that governance layer. I know that they're not going to be able to manipulate the data, change the data, tell a different story because the math will always math, and it's that simple. So, did I answer your question? Cool, for sure.
So are there any more questions burning questions here?
One more quick question, which is a net question. We all know AI is a wave heading towards us. Phones were invented in the 1930s, and then we had smartphones 70 years later. where are we in this process? I mean, so much of AI right now is taking your succinct memo, fleshing it out using ChatGPT, and then it being received by somebody else, and then being synthesized back to the same memo that was originally written. So that's not that productive. We have obviously hallucination, but at the same time, images had 6 fingers on them in January, but by June, they figured out that problem. So things are evolving very, very quickly. Is this 1, 10, or 20 years away from dominating the market?
Everybody looking at me like I got.
Do you want to start?
No, I mean, another way of looking at it is how quickly do you think adoption will take place in various aspects of the business, right? That was a question. Right.
Yeah, so I will say, even though we are tech and data driven, I am pretty cautious on how we use this technology. Just because, like, it's so powerful, but you do have your hallucinations, and things are changing so rapidly. So I think it's here to stay, but I do think people need to take a more measured approach, to it, and not just totally jump in, because you may not fully understand, what's going on. You really have to, and I was talking, to my friend Chris about this last night, when you're evaluating your business and your landscape, you really have to zoom out like 10, 30, 50,000 feet, and you really have to be like, where are we going? Are we trying to be a company that's acquired? Are we trying to grow the business? Like, what is our plan? And then how do we put together a sound technology plan to grow the business? Because everything is based off your data platform. So if you don't have a good data platform, it doesn't make sense in trying to leverage all this AI technology right off the bat. And you also have the data culture, and I think that's really huge because people are afraid. I told Cherie and Christine this, my first job, not my first job, but my first job out of grad school at Whole Foods Market, it was a group of people, there, and I was like the first data hire in Whole Foods, and I love Whole Foods, I still shop there. They picked their products at that time. Did it meet the quality standards? Did it look good on a shelf? And did it taste good? And I came and I was like, whoa, how is that data driven? And then these analysts were spending 8 hours, 8 of them, every Thursday running this report. And I was just like, this lends itself to automation. I went and I decided to use Python, which was picking up, and I automated, that whole thing. My friend Hamid and I did, and we automated that whole report with a nice little user interface, and the report was done in 30 seconds. So it was taking one person 8 hours. They enter in their region, their time frame, 30 seconds, sends out emails, sends it to all the different regional landing sites, all of that. I got taken to HR, for trying to put people out of a job, but that's not that's a different story. But it's coming, and I'm very bullish on it, and you're probably seeing that in a lot of investments into data centers as well too, which helps power a lot of this stuff. So I would say I would say 2 to 3 years. It's moving very quickly, but if you take a measured approach, 2 to 3 years.
I'm going to say 15 years.
Yeah.
I'm going to go the other direction. I think that regulation is the limitation. You see the Department of Justice suing RealPage right now with rent setting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of regulation that is not very well documented. So I'm going to say 15 years.
How about you, Cristian?
I don't know if I have a number in mind, but I have the following lens to look at this. I think wide adoption means that it's useful it's a fit for purpose, that it's useful. I think there are so many tools out there that when we're riding a hype wave, and I think there's already a number of businesses that are failing to report a profit, and I think in the next few years we will see a lot of those businesses fail. Yeah. And then we will see which tools are actually valuable and which kinds of models, whether probabilistic or more semantic. And then I think there will be wide adoption of those that survive. But I think we will see this hype wave crashing first before the wide adoption. Not to be a downer, but
it's the measured approach, because there's so many different things. Like to do DDQs, there's like 10 different tools out there right now, that are promising,
Changes every week.
Exactly.
So
right.
you want to ride the tsunami so you don't drown, right, basically, and land on shore safely. There are 1,000 more questions to ask, but I've taken up so much of y'all's time, and I want to thank our panel so much for sharing their work with us, and hopefully we'll be able to update this again in another couple of years and take another snapshot. But can we thank our panels? Thank you. Thank you.